segment. I'm going to talk about sex, and Sarah's going to talk about asexual propagation. The previous agent liked to do this segment because he got to talk about sex to a mixed audience. Next door neighbor gave me this book, and it talks about how things get pollinated. It was really sort of a good book. Anyway, sexual propagation is reproduction of plants from seeds. Seeds have three major parts: an embryo, an endosperm, and the seed coat. Everybody have a peanut in front of them. Open up a peanut. What do you see here? It's a seed coat. Open it up. They're a little old. I love doing this at the library because it makes such a great mess. Okay, open it up. What do you got? No. The embryo is the little thing right at the tip. The rest of it's food. The endosperm. So the next time you have a peanut, that's what you got. See, the embryo's down here. This little nib down here. Okay? Pretty dry. All right. What are the advantages of growing things from seeds? It's quicker. A lot of times it's more economical. Especially if you want a number of plants. If you want 20 big boy tomato plants, buy a packet of 30 seeds, you'll probably get 20 plants out of it. Total cost, including the plants, the seeds, the seed starting medium, your electricity and everything else, probably $5 for 20 plants. Go buy 20 plants at the big box store, it's going to be at least $20. Okay? It's the only way to propagate some plants. Some plants you just can't do asexual propagation of. It avoids disease transmission mostly, not entirely. And I'll talk about that in a sec. And it maintains genetic variations. You can't marry your first cousin, that kind of stuff. This allows for a lot of genetic variation and healthier plants. I had never had a case of seeds transmitting disease until last summer. I had bought from a company I'd never bought anything from before, some Heinz 8009 plum tomato seeds. They were untreated, and they were the source of Septoria leaf spot. Septoria leaf spot, late blight. I ordered them online. I got 4 packets because the only place I could find them online. I bought the plants at Lowe's and really liked them, so I'm going to start them from seed because I wanted a bunch of them. Well, the tomatoes were about like this. They were quite tasty, but because they had no leaf area. So I'm going to plant some of those seeds this spring, next month or month after, but I'm going to treat them with sulfur, fungicide, and I'll probably hit a chemical fungicide on them before I germinate them. And then I'm going to do an A/B comparison of seed-started plants versus purchased plants. But
how do you treat them?
How do you what?
How would you treat them?
I'm going to treat them. The sulfur, I'm just going to grind up some sulfur and put it in a little water or something like that. Let them soak. I may spray them with Daconil or something like that too. Okay. Seeding basics. High quality seeds. Obviously I did not buy high quality seeds that time. Store them correctly. I just keep them in a cabinet. It's a 68 to 72 degree room all year. Some people use a number 4 mayonnaise jar on Funk and Wagnall's porch, but don't get them warm. A cool, dry area is what you want. Seeds don't produce identical plants to the parent because the genetic materials are from both parents. The possible exception for this would be an heirloom tomato or something like that, where it's not a hybrid. And so the plant, if isolated from the rest of the world, would produce identically genetic material. But if it's next to another plant or a mile away from a different type of tomato, the odds are maybe good that it's close, but it's not for sure. When I started gardening 30-odd years ago, some seed catalogs had F2 hybrids, and I wonder, what on earth is an F2 hybrid? An F1 hybrid is, remember your high school biology. You get a red flower with an R gene, you cross it with a white flower with a W gene, and you get a pink flower. You don't get a P gene, but you get R and W genes. Okay? That's good diversity, best elements of both parent plants, and you got the pink flower hopefully you were looking for. Second generations, you take two of those pinks that have the R and W genes, cross them, what do you get? Well, you get one red, R over R, and then you get RW, and then you get WR, and you get WW. So this is the mix you get. You get reversion of characteristics to the original parents, and a lot of times you get undesirable, unpredictable results. So I've never seen an F2 hybrid in the last 15 or 20 years in the catalog. Certainly the seed is cheaper, but you're not going to get what you want. Why buy it? So you want first generation hybrids or heirlooms that are not hybrids. We'll talk about germinating, the media to use, containers, how to sow them, how to transplant, how to pinch, hardening them off, and some record keeping. For a seed to germinate, it's got to be viable. It's got to have a living embryo. Are those peanuts viable? Why not? Well, they're all dried out. They've been cooked. They've been roasted, so that killed the embryo. Okay. Internal conditions must be favorable. A lot of seeds seem to have internal clocks. I can't give you an example here. You know, I'm not going to germinate in November. It's too early. So there's some seeds that have internal clocks, so their internal conditions have to be favorable. External conditions are the temperature, water, moisture, those kind of things. That also has to be favorable. You need water, air for some seeds, light, and the correct temperature. You need water for any seed to germinate, air for any seed to germinate, light for some seeds. Some seeds really like it dark. Most seeds don't mind a little light. Very, very small seeds like begonia seeds, petunia seeds, they require light to germinate. That's why you would sow them on the surface of the soil. And you need the correct temperature. Temperature varies with the seed. Some seeds like 55, 65 degrees. It would be cold. Most seeds you can germinate at room temperature, which would be 68 to 72, something like that. Other seeds do better with a little bottom heat. I have a heating pad for that. I have an old heating cable here. And they want like 75 degrees to germinate best. So seeds may be, that's, any questions on the temperature thing? There's you can break dormancy in some seeds a number of ways. It can be, freezing. When I started these snapdragon seeds, I remember we talked about that 4 weeks ago, that I had frozen them. I'd put the packet in their freezer for 3 or 4 days before that. That simulated, for those guys, a winter. So they germinated quite well. Microbial activity, I keep bumping into this thing. Microbial activity, like going through an animal's digestive system, or microbial activity could also be soil-borne microbes. So those are things that would break dormancy naturally. Stratification, you could boil it, add a cold or warmth, and those things will work for different species. I've never had to boil any seeds, but cold works for certain varieties, like the snapdragons. And the best way to break dormancy varies with species. You can also, sometimes you need to break using mechanical means or chemical means. An acid bath will cut through a seed coat sometimes. Filing, like I told you on the geranium seeds, that they used to be pretty solid. Now they're scarified. And so, the scarified, you can put a crack in the seed coat so the moisture can get in. But I have scars still from a less than sharp penknife trying to saw away at geranium seeds from 30 years ago. Sandpaper and a hammer. These are cilantro seeds. I'll pass this around. and I'll hit a couple of them. And that'll break the seed coat. You'll see the intact seeds, and you'll see the half smashed ones there. So that's another way to break the dormancy. Media. The media I use is a peat vermiculite mix, commercially known generally as Jiffy mix. It's uniform in size so that seeds won't migrate down by themselves. It's well aerated. It's peat and vermiculite, so it's well aerated, but it'll hold moisture. Low fertility. This is also sold with fertilizer added, and I wouldn't touch that. I like to add the fertilizer to plants after they've germinated, not when they're there. And it's got to be disease and insect free, that kind of stuff. You don't want weeds. I'm not sure. It looks about half and half, but again, this is a commercial mix. There are other commercial mixes out there. You can get this stuff at Walmart. Commercial seed starting mediums. Fine pine bark also works well. There's some seed starting mediums with that. I use the sphagnum peat vermiculite. There are perlite-based mixes, but most of those perlite-based mixes have the big balls of perlite that you see in like African violet soils and things like that. The peat-based media help control damping off disease. That's the fungus that can kill seedlings early. I've had very, very little in 35 years of growing things from seed. Very, very little damping off. And it's been quite controllable. Don't use garden soil or topsoil. They're way too heavy. If you have a chance to come up here, there's got a little thing of potting soil here, and it's about twice as heavy as the peat vermiculite mix coming around. Containers. Oh, containers. All right, you got all kinds of plastic you salvage from your garden activities. You can buy these flats in different sizes. Ever a plug flat? This is a 50 plug flat. I just cut it up. Little containers like this. This is a deep 6-pack. There are some other individual containers. This is 24 things for flat. This would be called a, let's see, this would be a 606. 6 of these would fit in a standard flat, and each one's got 6 holes. Okay? This would be a 2401, because each one of these little guys there's 24 of these will fit in one of those, and it's one hole. That's the shorthand they use. But you don't have to go out and buy stuff. You can use, well, these are peat pots. We did that for the tomato plant. Plastic cups, butter tubs, all kinds of things. As long as if you use these, you just need to poke some holes in the bottom in order to allow for some drainage. If you use peat pots, you remember the old rule about planting a balled and burlapped plant? You got to get that burlap underneath the ground. Otherwise, it's a wick from the root area straight up, and the plant doesn't get any water. So same thing with a peat pot. When you plant this thing, either tear off the top ½ inch or inch of the peat pot and plant it, or make sure the whole thing goes underneath the ground so that it doesn't act like a wick taking moisture from the roots. Compressed peat pellets. You think there's a lot of props up here today. Wait till next week. It's a mess. A compressed peat pellet looks like this. It's got a little nylon webbing around it just to hold the thing intact. It's got a little hole here. In fact, I'll pass a couple of these around. Little hole in the center where you would put a seed or put a seedling. And those are good for things that you're not going to grow real big. And when you drop them in water, what you end up with is something that looks like this. Okay? So that's about the area, that's about the maximum root area you're going to get out of this. So, but for small things, rather than mixing up, peat and vermiculite mixes or something like that, this works real well. Anyway, I brought everything except the towel. Milk cartons, egg cartons, styrofoam cups, butter tubs. Wash, remove any debris. Soak in a 10% bleach solution. That's about a gallon. Glug glug. Bleach. Mix it up. Soak it there for a few minutes. Sterilize and let it air dry. Should be fine. Make sure you poke holes in the bottom for drainage of any of these things. Indoors. You moisten the medium, pre-moisten it, fill the container as we did for the seeds we started a month ago. Sow seeds at the depth set on the, stated on the seed packet. If it doesn't say on the seed packet, typical rule is cover them to their thickness. Okay? To how thick the seed is. And then you place the container in a tray like this, ½ inch of water, and then cover it with clear plastic. You can get these plastic covers. This is one for bigger plants, obviously. Some of them are about a third this size. And cover it. Always water from the bottom. You don't want to disturb the seeds. Always fertilize from the bottom. Okay. If you're going to do a seedling flat, for example, would look like, where'd that one go here? I would do something like this if I needed like 25 plants. So 30 seeds in here, spread out at the correct depth. Put them in there, cover the flat, make sure there's water in the flat. If it needs bottom heat, this is an old heating cable, which I used to use. Now I have a heating mat, which has a temperature control thermostat. And then you wait till let's see, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is like we did the tomato. Remember we put 4 seeds in here? And I chopped off all but the best one. We put about 4 or 5 seeds in each one of these lettuce things. And I chopped off all but the 2 best. This is almost ready to eat. This is the stuff we did a month ago in class. Yeah. And I use just shop lights.
When did you pull the cover off?
When everything's germinated, typically. For example, I kept the cover on the ivy. We're trying to root for quite a while to make sure they had plenty of moisture.
What's the purpose of the cover?
Keep moisture in. Any breeze down, that kind of stuff. I mean, new seedlings are pretty fragile people. So, now, again, so that's 2 ways to do it: a seeding flat and then transplant, and sow a couple in a single container. And this tend to only, be vigorous, big, ruthless. Just keep only the best seedling. Outdoors, rows. So seeds about 2 inches apart, not rows 2 inches apart. Then transplant seedlings to final destination, or sow where you want the plants to go. It depends on the species what you're going to do. Some seeds don't like to be transplanted, and so you're better off just sowing directly outside. If you know what you're doing, you can do zinnias inside. A lot of people just do them outside because they're tough to transplant. Tomatoes are easy. If you have something that's tough to transplant, you want to sow it inside. Putting it in a peat pot or one of those peat pellets is a good way to do it because the transplant shock is less. Everybody uses seed tape? No. Seed tape is a piece of, it's like paper mache, and it's got seeds at specified intervals, okay? It can have one seed type or it can have a multiple depending on what you're trying to do. They're not as popular as they used to be. Typically you get pretty good germination there. You just bury the seed tape outside. You don't have any overcrowding because the seeds are pre-spaced. The rows are straight. You can cut the tape at any point and do any geometry you want. It's much more expensive per seed though. So we will talk about that more because nobody does it anymore. All right. I need everybody to come on up. We're going to do a little transplanting here.